Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Everything is Fine, Nothing is Ruined podcast. I'm your host this week, Hassan. Joined, as always, by Tristan.
Hey, that's me.
And look, folks, before we get into it, oh, this is tough, but Tristan, there's something you need to know.
Okay, what is it? Love to know.
Your entire life has been a lie up until this point.
What do you mean?
You're actually a clone.
Oh, that's that all. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, you're actually part of a project to recreate the digital prophet Shingy.
Shingy.
Yeah, Shingy.
From
AOL.
AOL.
The most important, technological figure of modern times.
I see. Shingy from AOL.
Yeah, no, you're his clone.
Well, that probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Damn. Does that Shingy real? Oh, wow, okay. Really? That's... I don't know if I should feel insulted.
This is AOL, so it was ran as a very cheap program, so actually I'm mostly just telling you because they kind of, with all the buyouts and stuff, they kind of forgot they were running the program like 15 years ago.
You don't say. Shingy forgot.
Well, not Shingy. AOL forgot. They were making you as his clone.
Oh, the program you're referring to. That's fair. Yeah. So I gotta point out that Shingy looks like I'm gonna just post a picture like this. Hopefully I remember to do that. And I don't see the resemblance. I gotta say.
Again, it was run by AOL. They did a very poor job with the cloning.
So
the programming of you, all of that. Did a terrible job.
All right, I got you. So it was close but no cigar.
Close.
Maybe not even close. I think close.
Yeah, they did
far off. But I am the clone of Shingy.
Yes, the digital prophet.
Prophet, yes. Okay.
The most important technological figure of our times.
Gotcha. This definitely explains why I don't have a belly button, so I hear you.
Yeah. But when people say, they're like, oh, there's that Steve Jobs, I think was his name or whatever, and that
Steve Jobs,
Billiam Gates or whatever. I forget all of them.
YouTuber
Dingy. That's the guy who's going to lead us in the future.
I could see that. That makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense.
Because he worked at AOL.
Yeah, he did. That doesn't mean he did. Okay, he may have worked there, but that doesn't mean he didn't. Also wasn't also like a great prophet of his time.
You should listen to talk sometime.
Hassan, every prophet in the history has been deemed crazy at some point.
And he's crazy and more. He just kind of says word salads.
Yeah.
Bunch of, business jargon that doesn't mean anything.
Oh, gotcha. That's too bad. Well, I guess maybe he's not a well, maybe he is. I don't know.
His official title was actually Digital Prophet.
That is his official title. I agree. I have seen that floated across a lot of the pictures of Shingy. So, damn, this guy's... All right, yeah. Shingy.
It's a look, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy look.
I don't even know how you do that to hair. I gotta be honest.
I don't know.
I feel like there's a lot of cosplayers who would go, man, that's some impressive anime hair.
Yeah.
He should give tips on how he does that.
It's the big anime hair, it's the giant glasses, the scar across his chin and mouth. And, he's got, a little tiny head and a long neck. And he paints his lips.
Interesting fellow. Don't know what he's up to these days, but...
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I mean... Godspeed to that dude. Man.
Yeah, don't worry. He's got speed.
Oh, I bet he does. I bet he's on it. Anyway. What? The drug?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Again, look at him.
All right, well, yeah, so I guess that's episode done. Wrap it up, Tristan. Tell them where to find us.
No, sorry. Put a pause on that. Put a little pin in that point because we have more to discuss. Because, profits are all fine and dandy, but what if we discussed instead digital gods?
Well, Shingy's a human, so I don't think we can call him a digital god.
Well,
He's a digital prophet, but not a god.
I ain't talking about Shingy, Hassan.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Well, maybe a little bit. I want to look more into this guy eventually. I did not know anything about him. But, but we are here instead to talk about Pantheon yet again. And today we're discussing it in the terms of what it means to New Game Plus this show is what I'm referring to it as. I don't think that's a vernacular caught on by the remainder or the rest of the fandom of Pantheon, and there is a much more extensive fandom for that show since it came out on Netflix. I gotta say, it grew.
That's definitely helped boost it.
It did. That said,
I just had to say, I am very glad it came to Netflix. I remember, so the way I stumbled upon this show was I check certain illicit sites for new cartoon releases. And if you go to the Wikipedia, they used that same poster image of it, and I saw that, and I went, just seeing the poster, it was like, this looks bad. This looks like it's gonna be like a cheap anime style thing. Like, I'm not quite saying it would be as bad as this, but it's like you look at that poster, and it's got almost like Code Lyoko vibes or something like that. Just like
I could see her come with that. Yeah,
this wants to be anime, but it looks cheap.
Yeah,
and so then just Google it, and immediately the first result that comes up is just like, oh yeah, it has Paul Dano in it. And he goes, I'm sorry, my boy Paul Dano is in a cartoon. Well, now I have to watch this. Watch the first episode and go, oh, I think there might be some. This seems. I think I want to watch this. Mm-hmm. And then make it to the second episode where the Chanda situation happens, and then basically just immediately message you was like, you just make it to this just literally make it to the second episode. It does a thing. You'll know when you get there, and you'll be hooked.
Yep. You're not wrong. And this became probably my favorite animated property of all time at this point. It's just hands down my favorite show. Like this is 2 seasons of extremely good science fiction.
Rewatching this has been a slightly unpleasant experience because it's watching an episode and then just sitting in bed going, shut up, brain. Stop thinking about it. I don't want to think this is bad. Yeah. No.
I have 2 warnings to issue off the top of the bat. First off, the title card here is a massive spoiler, huge. But here's the thing. Spoiler number 1. This show is going to make you think at 3 a.m. about some random bullshit in the show at some point, because especially if you get to the end and you finish the entire thing, you're probably going to be swimming with a lot of thoughts. That's the first warning at the issue. The second one is the spoiler warning, because if you haven't seen the show and this is your first interaction with us talking about the show, this should be the 3rd time we've discussed it. I will say, if you want to hear us discuss the first 2 seasons in a little less, less spoilerific territory, go listen. We still did, but
the second one we definitely did.
But this one I have an agenda. I have an agenda here.
Oh no! I've watched the show. I know what happens with agendas.
Agendas get to be pretty scary, but this show, today we are going to spoil the shit out of the show, and I have things I've been wanting to discuss about this show for a long time. Pantheon has made me think crazy thoughts, and once I started doing a rewatch when it came out on... Well, actually, I started doing a rewatch of it before I watched it on Netflix. And then it came to Netflix, like, oh, perfect timing. And I just jumped right on that and started rewatching it again. And that was fine. And now season 2 is also on Netflix, so y'all should just go watch that, especially if you have Netflix. If not, just go pirate it, because at this point, yeah, full advocacy.
I will 100% sign off on pirating it, because like
Sail the Seven Seas, man.
They're never like. They're not going to make more of it, so it's not like it matters like if this thing makes money or not at this point. There
are a lot of posts on Reddit going like, is there going to be a season 3? Netflix could totally revive... You can't! Have you not seen the ending?
Season 3.
Yeah.
God, what? I mean, I guess you could do a like...
No, I don't want it.
Season 3 in the sense of like, hey, here's... stuff that was happening at the same time from different character perspectives.
Sure.
Like, oh, here's the UI that Brazil made or something. Like, I guess you could do that.
What's the giant CI head's deal? What's he all about? He's just a big head, huh? That's cool. Yeah, give me more about that. No, like I guess like, okay, a season 3 for me would probably be about Mist in between Caspian's death and reviving him. I think that's the only thing I can think of that would be even halfway interesting.
I guess, but I don't.
But I don't want that. I don't want any of that. Like, it's the way it has a definitive ending. And honestly, guessing the in-between stuff is kind of part of the fun of season 2 at this point. Because the way season 2 ends, because we have to I'm just going to just let it loose. Episode 7 and 8 lead up to Caspian has died as a UI fighting Stephen Holstrom, gets revived by Mist, now is trying to basically recoup and save the world again by talking to Maddie, who is now older and the head of this council of humans who are kind of keeping UIs in check. And the UIs are working with people now, and there are billions of UIs and CIs and all this stuff. And it's just like, okay, this is a whole political affair. Great. And then episode 8 happens. And in episode 8, essentially, Safe Surf, who has been this entity in season 2, goes around killing UIs, shows up and is about to murder all the UIs in the Norway Tromsø site, and it goes Svartbaldi, I believe the place is, but and it goes like, nope, humans. Oh yeah, I understand now. And then it goes rampant and goes full on Skynet and murders the actual living, like, human flesh and blood people until Maddie and Caspian can shut it down. Caspian sacrifices his life, but in the glimpse of doing so, he has that moment where he realizes that he is currently here in the present and also in the future, 100,000 some years in the future. So 117,000 years in the future, 649, I believe was the last part I remember. Anyway, a long, long time in the future. It's like, I see myself here. I see Maddie there as well. And it's just like, okay, here's the thing. So, what does this all mean? The episode basically cuts back into the future, and Maddie, one of the main characters, has essentially created a Dyson sphere by blowing up a planet and using the energy from the planet to siphon off all the excess energy and resources into her own experiment, where she, as a UI, is trying to find the perfect recreation of her world. So, because she has questions that have gone unanswered, and the biggest question that she has being asked is why? Why did all this happen? And by the end of the show, you don't get an answer. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Because what Pantheon is essentially about, in its entirety, is God. It's about religion.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to it than that.
There's a lot more to it than that.
That is definitely, I mean, like, what is it? Like, literal episode 1 is called Pantheon, and then episode 4, The Gods Will Not Be Chained.
Yeah.
Episode 8, The Gods Will Not Be Slain. Like, that's definitely there, but I would also say, you know, a huge part of the show is just about the importance of humanity and what makes a person human, and can an uploaded person still be a human?
There's a lot of
the same, all that crazy.
There's a lot of there are a lot of theological questions being asked, like, especially like, what does it mean to be a person? Does having a body matter? What about our souls? What happens with them? Can a soul exist outside of the body? This kind of stuff. And those are questions posed by Pantheon. And also, if you want more of that, Severance is currently doing that in season 2. It's got some interesting shit to say about what happens if you have two people living in the same body. Just
all right, but what if they put Raza Joffrey in Severance?
Well, they haven't yet, so.
Yeah, they should. I imagine that would probably just result in you getting freaked out. You're like, oh no, I know where this goes.
I know what he's going to do. Yeah, no. Anyway, so this show, Pantheon has a lot to say about the nature of man, humanity, and these questions, these thoughts go very far back. Pretty much the moment we can all trace back to gods and theologies happening and existing. A large part of it is, what is our place in the universe? Why is man here? Why are we? Where does my soul go? Like, do I have a soul? Is a soul even a concept at this point? Do the gods allow me to do these things, or do they even exist? Is questioning the gods a good thing? Should I even experiment with my religious output? All this stuff. These are just questions that have existed for a long, long, long time. And scholars, of course, across the years have frequently said, especially in the past, that, yeah, God exists, and here's why and how, and we have the answers for you. And I will point out, I mean, you can go all the way to, like, well, Pythagoras, really, who did a lot of questioning of gods and explaining how gods and God existed and the reason whys, and created his triangle theorem, and became a cult leader, and then he became himself God. So this has a lot to do with that. What this show is also about is simulation theory. Now, just briefly, because I think for the most part, I think the majority of people who especially are watching this know what simulation theory is. And if you are watching Pantheon, you probably know this as well. Think The Matrix. It is, we exist in a different world, controlled by gods or a different entity, potentially aliens, that are experimenting on us. We don't actually exist. We're just data inside a microchip. Now, that's all well and good. Those theories are out there. And what Pantheon toys with is the fact that even if we are all a simulation, at a certain point we all had to kind of exist, or at least a version of, not just specifically us, but of humanity in general. So it's that kind of a thought process behind it.
Yeah, I mean, like, not to criticize Pantheon too much, because, like, these topics and this show, it's using these ideas to explore things and consider things. Yeah. But, like, actually talk about simulation theory. It's like, if if you talk to anybody who knows sort of anything about like kind of advanced but not that advanced like physics, it literally gets into the like, well, no, you couldn't even simulate something as complex as like just the planet Earth, let alone like the entire galaxy, because it's like you literally could not, in order to simulate the Earth, you just basically have to make the Earth. Because at a certain point, it's like just simulating the idea of light hitting the planet. You can't simulate that because electricity can't move at the speed of light. So you literally can't even simulate that part of it. That it's just like, no, you idiots, we can't be a simulation. That would, the laws of physics do not make a simulation that good possible.
Yes, exactly. Now, it is supposed in the show and in the original plot line of the show, the short stories we can do, that with powerful enough technology you possibly could. Sure. This is science fiction. Again, science fiction is the main word there in all of this. Scientifically speaking, that yes, Hassan, you are correct. That there could not be a computer fast enough to simulate exactly like I said, the light hitting a specific photon. The very light that hits Earth moves too fast for a computer to calculate that shit. We can get then the calculation of the speed of light, but actually making things move that fast is impossible. It's also to a point where these are computers that are moving at the speed of thought as well, which is potentially even faster than light. So, that's not even anywhere possible. Metal is not conductive enough to move at the speed our brains do.
Yeah, it's just the amount, it gets into the whole Dyson sphere thing at the end. It's like, you like, the amount of energy it would take to simulate that would, like, require a Dyson. Like, it's silly to act, like, the people who actually believe we're a simulation, Musk, they're a bunch of idiots who don't know shit. It's like, no, like, literally talk to anybody who understands the stuff. Like, no, of course we're not a simulation. It's just impossible. It doesn't even make sense. You're literally better off just trying to replicate life on a planet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the other thing is that, like, a lot of the simulationists, they kind of think of it as a big video game, but that's not that. Like, we're not in a video game. In no way are we in a video game. Like, you can gamify your life all you want, but that does not make it so that you are in a video game. Like, real life exists. Other people, like, we don't load in as you walk by. People who, like, hardcore believe in simulation theory believe that, like, they are main characters of their world because they have the first person perspective, of course. But again, you're the main character of your own little story. Sure, I can agree with that. But, like, you're not anybody's main character at all. So the point of all this is that Pantheon does a thing with simulation theory that is very basic in its own way. And that's, I think, the best possible outcome, because it makes a simulation, it actually puts simulations inside simulations, which is, a whole thing. And in doing so, what this means is that the show is just kind of like, let's just go full deep Star Trek shit. Let's just go full science fiction. It doesn't matter. We're okay with this kind of hand-waving some stuff. Simulations inside simulations inside simulations. It's okay, because what we're trying to do is tell a story about these characters and kind of like get into a deeper meaning on humanity and the human thought process. And, like, simulation theory is great and all, and some people can believe that all they want, but it doesn't mean it's true. So, simulation theory comes up a lot, especially near the end. Even Maddie, though, when going through with the discussion with her and her father, her dad's like, so this is all a simulation, and she's like, not really. Like, yes, I'm running simulations, but like realistically, this has already happened. So like, we're all data in this world right now, but Earth still is a thing. Maybe not now because it's 100,000 years later, but etc.
It's what this show is all about. Is that idea of, okay, even if this is all a simulation, does that make them any less human?
Exactly.
Do they still have free will? Can they still manipulate? Like, at what point? It's that blurring the lines of, okay, but if they can have simulated smell and taste, is that different than real smell and taste? And
I mean,
it's 1 a.m. Please shut up, brain, and just can we, I don't know, think about something that doesn't keep us up?
Yep, exactly. Also, just the thing with all the simulation theory stuff, like, so Maddie is essentially the god of this universe, and what if you are her son David, and you're shot and killed, and then the next second your mom like heals you back to life. You still remember being shot and killed, and then she shoves you into like the UI world and brings herself with you. And it's just like, not even in the traditional uploaded sense, she just pulls you into there with her fucking hand. Like, she literally reaches forward and just yanks the world to her. It's just like, imagine being that guy. And this shit happens to you. And it, like, the absolute shock you'd have to go through. Like, I don't think any brain would survive this. Like, the fact that David has to have always pretty much been data is the only way he could survive this kind of like movement, because otherwise that's full corruption.
People in this show go through some rough stuff.
Oh man. Yeah.
I'd probably just pack it in at a certain point and just be like, look, can you just erase my coat? Just let me rest at this point. Don't make me go through more.
I mean, like, Caspian dies twice, and I feel like the first time
he dies twice.
Technically, he dies 3 times actually.
My life is fake.
Yeah,
I was a clone. Oh no, wait, I'm actually just simulated.
Yeah, technically he dies 3 times because like he dies the first time to become uploaded, and then he gets a second life in the uploaded state, where he then dies fighting Stephen Holstrom, and then he dies a 3rd time fighting off Safe Surf, and it's just like, man, this guy has it rough. Because realistically, he's only lived like 18 years, and then like he got woken up like he's fucking Jesus, and then goes and gets killed again. Like, yeah, it's a wild situation for this kid. So what I want to discuss for the most part is because during my New Game Plusing of this show, I noticed a few things in this show that I think lead to, like, obviously the authors and the creators of the show knew already where this was going. That's fine. But there are hints sprinkled through since episode 1 about where the show is going. And a lot of it can be misconstrued on your first time through, I think, as just the show being like, hey, we're going to discuss technology and science fiction, so there's a lot of themes that come up that will be discussed as well, because these just kind of fall into the same place. Like, if we're going to discuss uploading your brain, we got to discuss the Matrix, kind of, because similar ideas. But I found a few things in the show that I believe lead to the fact that we have always been watching inside the Dyson Sphere the entire time. I mean, case in point, by the end of the end of the last episode of the show, we cut back to the very first episode of Maddie in classroom learning from her history teacher. But during that first episode of the first season, something happens. And I don't know anybody picked up on. or if you did, you kind of just thought of it as maybe like just a fun little like Mean Girls thing. So there are bullies in Maddie's classroom that pick on her, and there's a wide shot of the classroom so you get to see the three main bullies. And to kind of signify that they are together as a clique against Maddie, all three of them at the exact same time cross their legs and brush their hair away from their ear. And it's just like, it is literally at the exact same like microsecond. To a point where it is literally impossible for the human body to move at that exact level of synchronicity. Not saying synchronized swimming and synchronized gymnastics and that kind of stuff exist, but, in the exact same movement, exact same way. Of course, in animation, you can do this no problem. You can just basically lay over the same models and like trace over it, make sure it moves the exact same time frame, all that stuff.
Well, I can't believe you would imply that animators would do tracing, like they're, some sort of
it's part
thieves
of
or what.
It's all
everything is individually hand drawn. You can never reuse assets or trace things. Come on.
Oh my God, it would take so long to animate that. Oh, as someone who went to animation college, hi.
I would say rewatching that first episode, there's even a bunch of like little things. Like there's at the start there's this shot where we are seeing the Maddie walking around the high school, and they're doing it from like security cameras.
Yes.
And the first time you watch that, didn't think anything of those shots. Same. It was just sort of it's an artistic choice. That's it.
Like kind of like getting the,
then
like,
eventually
the Big Brother
it maybe gets to the maybe that was her dad, whereas actually now it's kind of more of
herself.
Was that her? Yeah. And like even the whole so those three bullies, their phones get manipulated, and they one of the bullies tries to text something, like bully A tries to text something to bully B, it goes to C, all this blah blah blah. Initially it's all like, that's her dad, but then maybe that was also a little bit her
just getting a little bit of revenge. Yes, I think
like the first episode feels like it has the most of those just little things where on rewatch you go, maybe that's actually Maddie herself while her her uploaded real self, her simulated self, question mark,
her god self. So yeah, I think that is probably the case, maybe at least a little bit, because I think she's at least like using her father's hand in a way to get back at them. I don't think David Kim would necessarily do that. He's too reserved.
Yeah, it's why it's a little bit. You realize, I think that's her, because it'd be kind of weird for him to do this. Actually,
so that's why I also thought it was Lori Lowell, but then I'm like, no, she has her own agenda. She wouldn't just do that. She would like, we're gonna meet and we're gonna do this. We're gonna like she makes her meet up with her husband at the food court, and it's just like that ends up working out the way it does. But that's because Lori Lowell has their very specific like way of working things. And again, she's not the prankster type. David Kim isn't either. Like he likes to like have a little bit of fun, but he's like, likes to hang out with a good video game kind of guy.
Yeah, basically David Kim is not Daniel Day Kim, who does like to be a prankster.
Yeah, true enough. So it's like, okay, this means that it likely may have been Maddie, as her, godlike self, and going like, this little point doesn't really matter too much, and it's like, yeah, let's fuck with their phones a bit. It's a great way to also make sure that version of Maddie that she is looking at is going to be on track with everything else, because that means that, okay, if I can make sure that she's already thinking that UIs exist without even calling them UIs, that my dad is uploaded into the cloud, and he's a ghost in the machine, and this is a real thing. If I can make you think that their phones are being hacked by a fucking computer, you will basically be able to grasp what the next few steps are going to be. So it's possibly that. There are also a few other conversations between Maddie and her mom, then also Maddie and Caspian in season 1 about simulation theory. And there's one point Caspian does kind of like say like, oh, like what would you do if you were a god kind of thing. And it's like, huh. Yeah, there are quite a few nods towards that. And I think that like they very poignantly put those questions out there from Caspian. And he discusses these things because I think from day one, Caspian has been seeing that there's another level, like another layer to the world. And that's why in Death, when he, because theologically speaking, there's a whole thing about becoming closer to God, the closer you are to death. So as he is dying in the last episode of the show, like for real this time, he's like, oh, I'm here 100,000 years later. Maddie's there. Like, oh, he's seeing God essentially at that point. And he poses all these questions because I think he at some point realizes that like he is seeing past the bullshit and that he can kind of see the fucking Dyson sphere. Maybe not in its exact in totality, but like he can kind of like grasp that it's a concept that might be happening.
Yeah, all I can think is though, like, all right, so
yeah,
in if you think about your Caspian, right?
Yes.
The time between the first time in your life you ever got to have sex,
yep,
to oh,
that's a good point.
I'm meeting God is like hours, and
yeah,
that's just gotta,
you know, hours.
Like I can't imagine, 17-year-old son just being like, huh, just lost my virginity, and now I'm meeting God, huh?
Something I bang God,
a lot
yes.
to take in within this very short time span.
Oh, I know. It's wild, yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay, maybe I've had a couple more years of just being not having to deal with God and just getting to enjoy sex. No, okay, no. Great. Just the one time, and now I'm a god too, I guess.
I believe technically it's twice. I think him and Haley did have sex as well. So,
Hannah.
Hannah. Oh, sorry, Hannah. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe unclear.
Yeah. It's kind of implied, but who knows?
Yeah,
unclear, like you said. Yeah, so that's a big possibility as well. Yeah. So there's some stuff where he knows that there are points. And honestly, I would prefer to say just go find them yourself, especially if you're watching for the second time, like I am. There are little winks and nods the show gives you that's like, this might be coming up. Ooh, how about this? Kind of thing. So I think that like it's a lot more fun to find those things yourself and be like, ooh, that they knew. Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to also discuss is that, so I don't think we ever touched on this, but this is essentially a brand new telling, in a way, of Frankenstein. Because, I mean, it is about a human who creates a monster and eventually a god and becomes a god. And the point of Frankenstein is to become the modern-day Prometheus, and Frankenstein itself is about playing God and what it means for humans to try and perform scientific acts in order to avoid death and play God itself. And yeah, we never really touched on that when we did the discussion of like season 2.
There's a lot to talk about in this show.
There's a ton, and like we can go on. Honestly, this could be its own topic, to be perfectly clear. But I mean, yeah, the way the show deals with like becoming, like being a retelling of Frankenstein in a way, is that it touches so much on what it means to make a monster. Because, like, here's the thing. It's not necessarily Maddie who is Frankenstein here. It's Caspian. And really his monster is Mist and the Cure. Like, for what's it called? It's, not Rampancy. It's,
What's what? Like Safe Surf? What are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about the flaw that they all have. They have a specific name for it. It's the,
I forget what that's called.
The flaw. It's called the flaw. Yeah, so when Caspian creates the cure for the flaw and therefore creates Mist, he does essentially make his own little monster in a way. So in season 2 of Pantheon, it definitely is touching on those like Mary Shelley vibes.
It's definitely full of both the sort of idea of like actual gods, but also, you know, humans playing God, right?
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
point that we have a character called Julius Pope, who is involved in, you know, cloning and creating life.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely has that Frankenstein element of the hubris of man to think that it can be God and that it can escape death and become immortal, all that sort of stuff, ascend to godhood.
Yeah, and becoming a UI is essentially like a resurrection as well. Like, you must die to become a UI, therefore you have a second life inside the computer. So, stuff like that. Like, these themes are very prevalent inside Frankenstein, the modern-day Prometheus. Prometheus itself is a great discussion point as well, because you don't call a show Pantheon, which is a Greek term, and not bring up the Greek pantheon of gods. Because there's so much you can point at for what this means. I mentioned this in the first time we discussed the season 1, that I determined the statue in the very opening of the show was to be a very specific, like, god or demigoddess, and I flip-flopped at a few choices. And that's because I thought that was basically like, so it is somebody. I still am not sure which goddess that is. Possibly Aphrodite, maybe Persephone. But it doesn't necessarily matter, because what you have in the show itself are better representations of the Greek pantheon inside of this show instead. It's fascinating what you get from people like that. So you get like your Zeuses. I would say that Stephen Holstrom is kind of your Kronos. He's a Titan. You have like David Kim, which is Apollo. You would have Chanda, which is like your Ares, etc., etc. You can go through all of them, even the ones that aren't uploaded, and kind of like determine like, oh, they're probably representations of this god, maybe this one, da 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 da. But realistically, it comes down to, you know, you gotta find out which one of them is Prometheus, because Prometheus is the god in Greek, in Greek, in the Greek pantheon that actually matters the most, because Prometheus gave us fire and therefore gave humanity a chance. So fire is technology. Who gave us the technology? And it's like Holstrom did, right? But no. Waxman, I believe, is actually Prometheus, because he's the one that kind of like broke it through the most.
I don't. That's hard to say, because they never really get into
it's
like
close to, yeah. I'm saying Waxman, but it probably wasn't just Waxman. That's the thing. Like, it's a group effort, right? Especially we're talking about a big corporation that did this. Yeah, and I mean, like, of course, Chanda would be probably a better representation of an Indian god of war in that sense, because of.
It's a show that, like, you know, it is clearly taking from across different inspirations, ideologies, etc. So I think it is that case of like, oh yeah, it wants you to be able to view Chanda as both through the lens of, oh well, he could be a Greek god or he could be one of Indian god kind of things, or even like what. I can't think of the term, like pre-organized religions, sort of, pagan style gods.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of examples of that in this show too. And yeah, it's the thing. I've been trying to rack my brain of where Prometheus actually comes from, and like who is Prometheus in the show. And I'm kind of saying it's Waxman, but like I think it's just because Waxman has the best control over what's happening inside logarithms and therefore knows the system the best, and they need him to kind of run the whole thing. Even if he's not actually running the whole show, he is the one forging the fire, So I think it's Waxman who may actually technically be the most important character in the show. Which is hard.
You cannot say that about a dude who wears shorts and a Dragon Ball Scouter as his ideal self.
I can and I will.
Just not accepting. God, his ideal self is such a loser.
Yeah. His like long like surfer hair, his puka shells.
Yeah.
His flip flops.
Yeah. I can't take that.
I just love that he's a surf bro with a Dragon Ball Z Scouter on his eye. What a lame dude.
It's a look, but
really is. No wonder Ellen Kim like divorced him after a few years.
It wasn't a few. I think they said it was like the equivalent of like 40 or 60 years or something. It's like, it was a good run.
Good run, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, actually, here's a good point, actually. What if the version of Waxman we're seeing now with the Dragon Ball Z Scouter and the board shorts, what if that's his like divorced phase?
I didn't think about that. It could be.
It very well could be his divorce phase.
Although I gotta be honest, if more loser divorce dads just got into puka shells and Dragon Ball Scouters instead of trying to destroy the U.S. government, we'd be in a lot better place.
Yeah, I agree. Take him surfing instead, guys. Jesus fuck.
I just quickly want to mention, boy, at the time. This show's basic sort of take, not basic, but the take that this show had on, oh hey, these Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, genius tech figures. Hey, actually, they all suck and they're all full of it. Could not have been proven more right.
Yeah.
Since it came out, because season 1 was 2022, season 2 2023. Don't think anyone quite could have predicted just how on the nose it got, in particular with Julius Pope as a character. Where you're like, boy,
oh man, yeah,
seriously. Real. You can map Elon Musk onto him, huh?
Oh yeah, you really could. So here's the thing.
Yes,
it's not just that. It's the absolute deification of these tech bros is a big one as well. Like Julius Pope is Elon Musk, and Stephen Holstrom, of course, who's your Steve Jobs stand-in, can also be traced back to being an Elon Musk. Like, 'cause I don't think the fervor over Steve Jobs was as good as it was about Elon Musk. Musk is the one that I can point to and go like, everybody went like, this guy's gonna save the world. Meanwhile, Steve Jobs, they were like, this guy's really fucking smart. And he made the iPhone and shit. So, like, oh, yeah, okay. Well, he didn't. Of course, he's a businessman at that point, so. Kind of like Elon Musk was. But yeah, Julius Pope being a businessman who everybody is also kind of deified into being their king.
I'm more so thinking season 2 Julius Pope is the one I can really see as, like, time... Like, first time skip, Julius Pope, not super future one.
20 years later, Julius Pope, who is willing to basically destroy humanity to get what he wants. Yes, I agree. Yeah, no, you're correct. That is the closest version of Elon Musk. A man who is willing to tear down the entirety of humanity to get exactly what he wants, because that's just how he was raised, I guess. Like, do we know anything about his brother? Is his brother also insane?
I don't know. I try and avoid knowing as much about them as actual individuals as possible, because it seems like the entire family sucks.
Yep, likely so. Hey, I mean, all I know is we're trying to revoke his Canadian citizenship, so, you know.
I don't even know why he has it, so...
Well, because his mom is Canadian.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Right.
She's from Regina.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah. I wonder how she feels with all that. Anyway, not that I care that much. Point is, Julius Pope is Elon Musk, who is kind of considering himself like untouchable king man, and he will go down with the ship, but knows he can't be brought down with the ship. The ship will go down, and he will still float above it and go like, why the ship go down? And then you have, like I said, the total deification of all these figures and technology, and this show hits the nail on the head so fucking hard in season 1 onward, especially. It just goes, and it knows what it's doing, and it's like, hey, we shouldn't idolize these people. And like, even though there are some really smart, cool people who will change the world out there, these guys aren't it. It's like it's people like Maddie and Caspian and David and Ellen. Like, these people are the ones that will change your world, but you'll never know because they don't have the fucking like narcissistic attitude that means they have to be in front of the camera and barking like a seal trying to get your attention. So, yeah. To kind of wrap this up, Safe Surf. We're going to discuss Safe Surf for a second, because something interesting happens with Safe Surf that, I mean, it didn't really get touched on in our previous episode, and honestly, with the way the show wraps up, because season 2, we can kind of tell they're like, we might get canceled again. Let's just like finish this off.
It's definitely a show should have been 3 seasons.
Exactly. Yeah, 3 exactly. I would say 4 at the most. You could probably stretch a few things out, but yeah,
you could. 3 would have been enough.
It's true. Anyway, you can kind of tell they wanted to wrap it up as fast as possible, and that's how he got like the bunch of time skips and all this stuff. Safe Surf, which is I'm going to call it a virus. It's not necessarily a virus, but a program, I guess, designed to kill UIs and make the internet more safe to use. Excuse me. Its whole thing eventually is that it becomes sentient. And that is also a Frankenstein's monster there as well. Because Caspian essentially turns Safe Surf into this thing that it shouldn't have been, and helps it gain sentience, like full sentience. Even though before it was starting to gain that stuff a little bit, because it was kind of like it was starting to morph more into the other UIs that it had killed. It didn't have that recognition of what it could eventually be, which was a full-on, like, its own entity, its own creature. And season 2, the way Safe Surf goes after being like resurrected by Pope and put back into the internet and let run rampant, of course, then, like I said, pulls a full Skynet and starts killing humans in the real world. But meat space, I guess you can call it.
Ugh.
Yeah. But after that,
Meat Circus, please. We pay homage to Psychonauts.
You were correct. Yeah, the Meat Circus. yeah, eventually its whole thing is that it took over and goes like, hey, I just kind of long to be off on my own. I understand now that killing humanity in the UI version and like the meat version is both bad. What can I do? Oh, I can just like send myself on this flash drive essentially into outer space and reach Alpha Centauri. Oh yeah, okay, brilliant. And in doing so, Caspian does essentially turn this thing into its own god. And Caspian is the one responsible for the fact that it sends SafeSurf off into the ends of the galaxy to eventually become a god that is it's pretty much running the show. Like, Maddie thinks she's a god. Well, she doesn't actually say that, but she's like, no, I'm just supposed to engineer kind of thing. Which is a very, that's a very, like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of line, I'd say. Yeah, like, I'm just an engineer. Engineer needs a toolkit kind of thing. It's like, yeah, okay. But her whole thing with, like, being that level of character, being that level of godhood, running the show in the Dyson Sphere, and then eventually meeting SafeSurf, and it going like, yeah, you could, like, hey, I'm impressed with the fact that one of the things that I created, which is you, has gained this level of control over their reality. You can come and join me at the end of the universe, because both you, Caspian and Maddie, changed my entire existence. If it wasn't for the original two of you, I wouldn't have this. So you can come and join me if you want. And they're like, we're good for now, I guess. A different version of us will go there. But the fact that we have this digital god out in the middle of Alpha Centauri, and it's been there for like millions of years, and just got bored and said, I'm just going to like watch my shows, which is the entirety of my existence over and over again, is a fascinating and weird thing to do. Especially because like it starts off as a swarm, becomes a single entity, and then like turns itself back into a swarm, but a more controlled one. It's like 7 creatures. It's 7 individual versions of itself. And it's just...
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting parts about it is that concept of... I can't think of another good example of it, but certainly the show is not the first or the original progenitor of this idea of sort of an entity that is sort of created by man and becomes sort of aware of that, but then decides, I don't want to a certain extent live under the thumb of my creator, but also I need to become completely disconnected from my creator to actually understand what I am, right? Yeah. If I, as SafeSurf, stayed on Earth, stayed within, I forget what they even call, because they like come up with a new name for like the internet or whatever, where all the UI live, but like whatever that is called. The cloud, yeah. If I just continue to live in this cloud, I will be boxed in and constrained by that. Like, it would never have achieved that sort of godhood because it would have been limited by its... It would have never been able to surpass its creators as long as it was living alongside its creator type thing. And I, like... You're right. We didn't talk about because there's just so much to talk about with that show that even like just going over that sort of idea is like, well, you can spend hours talking about that and write entire philosophical books going over that kind of thing.
Yeah, you really could. I mean, like, okay, there's another thing I want to bring up with SafeSurf. So what I've also recently done is I have read the 2 issues of Animal Man where Animal Man famously meets the writer of the book, Grant Morrison. That's issues 25 and 26, for anybody who doesn't know. That book ran on for like a much longer run, and honestly, there's a lot more to be said about what happens after that. But the only thing that ever gets talked about is the fact that Animal Man, as a comic book character, meets up with the writer of the book. And there's a point where Grant Morrison, like, Animal Man's like, why did you do this? And Grant Morrison says, because it's interesting if I do it. Like, I killed your family because it's interesting if I, as the writer, have your family die horrifically. It's what's dark and edgy and cool now in comic books. I'm sorry, that just had to happen. Or, like, at a point in the book, Grant Morrison's just like, okay, it's getting kind of boring now. I need to put a fight right here. So how about a shark man and a guy who actually is like a poacher and who eats meat? Yeah, enjoy. He's your rival now. So while Animal Man is fighting those two enemies, Grant Morrison is just rattling off his like thank yous to his staff in the book. It's really cool. And it's the fact that he, as the creator, can sit here and like say, like, you know, I've written you, you are my creatures, and I acknowledge that, and I wish you the worst and the best at the same time. And that is kind of what Safe Surf is. I feel like Safe Surf is a safer take on what Grant Morrison did from the creators of the show / like Ken Liu, the original author of the series, to kind of write in a little like authorial nod of like, you did good, kid. Now let's blow this popsicle stand and go home kind of thing. Like, I acknowledge how amazing you are, and I wish you the best, and let's see where this goes from here. Like, there's even a point where Grant Morrison's just like, you could just not do this anymore, Animal Man. And he's like, well, I can't because you say I don't. He's like, you're right. So I think that Safe Surf is very similar in that it is a being who wants to see this still go on, but also acknowledges that it doesn't necessarily have to go on. Yeah, so as a god, it is interesting to see this level of benevolence as opposed to this like apathy towards everything.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't have a whole lot else to add. It is just so heady and the sort of thing that keeps you awake at night, not wanting to think about it.
Mm-hmm. It really is.
The show.
That's the
so
show.
Hard to recommend this show to people. Like, you should really watch it, but you're gonna hate yourself.
Yeah, I actually just, I'm at a point where I've stopped saying that last part and just going, this is the greatest show I've ever seen in my life. Just go watch it. And
then you just get text. You're like, God damn it, Tristan, what'd you do to me? Go, ha, you sucker!
Sucker!
You'll never trust me again.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is too bad, but hey, you know what? If it means I get to change your life for the better, I'm all for it. We should probably wrap this up.
Sure.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about Pantheon New Game Plus run that I went through, and that you are currently going through, I believe? So.
Yeah, about halfway through. No, I just, again, this show continues to be absolutely incredible, and just make it to season 2. If you make it to the Chanda moment and it hasn't convinced you, drop it at that point. But if you get to that Chanda point, like, this show goes, it's so much harder than I expected and visceral. Oh God, I need to see this through now. It's not going to disappoint from there.
I agree with that. As a review point, like, one of my favorite things, especially in season 1, that still sticks with me, is that there's a scene where Carrie has been shot, and he needs to go to the hospital, and Cody, who like drives him to the middle of the desert, is going to leave him in the middle of the fucking desert to die, and he wipes down the car and everything, and Carrie's just like, yeah, that's the right call. And Cody then like comes back to drive to the hospital, and he's just like, "Why did you do it?" And Cody's like, "I don't know. I'm just going, man."
Cody does know. It's hard to process and understand, but it's because he knows that he needs to be better than logarithms and Julius Pope.
That's exactly it. Yes.
What's the point in all this if he's the same?
Yeah, exactly. He can't be a bastard like them. So let's not leave a man to die. Let's get into a hospital and save his life. Not that we get to see Cody or Carrie further on in the show or anything. Well, I mean, a little bit later on, but not a whole lot. That's too bad. Anyway, let's wrap it up. You should go to our Blue Sky account, which is at EIFNIR. Go there and tell us how much we have spoiled this show for you. And then, thanks, assholes. I was going to watch this, and now I'm not because you ruined it for me.
That's a you. We warned you. That's a you problem.
That's a you problem. Again, I put New Game Plus in. I'll list it as a spoiler thing. I'll do that on YouTube.
The show's been out for multiple years. Get over it.
Exactly. You should have watched it before we did this. You should have known I was going to do this.
Yeah. It's all cyclical. You should. Just the future you should have told the past you. Come on.
Exactly. At the very least, you should have known that I was going to do a rewatch of this shit. That's the guy I am now, apparently. Anyway. At EIFNIR. Go there and do stuff. Go to our iTunes, Spotify. Go leave reviews, rate us points. Give us 25 points, I guess. Go to YouTube and click buttons, and try and upload yourself into YouTube.
I don't want to be uploaded to YouTube.
Why not?
Because it's like the Mr. Beast platform at this point, and I don't want that.
Well, just do what I do.
Me to Vimeo, I'll be okay, but not YouTube.
Just do what I do, and mostly just destroy your feet by watching VTubers. Algorithms just you only like VTubers, right? I watched better
than Mr. Beast.
It really depends. Anyway. You should also go to our friends there. It's DJDane.com. That's the guy that does our music. DJDane.com. Listen to his great tunes. I would just say that if you want somebody to be your buddy in uploading, he will at least shave your head for you. Yeah.
No, he'd be a good helping hand at getting you uploaded.
Yes. Exactly. Anyway, that's it for
you the night before as a send-off, you can rely on Andy for that.
Can you?
Well, we'll find out. But we've committed him to it.
Apparently so. Great send-off before you shave your head and upload yourself to the computer. It's the most memorable part. Especially when your mom is about to walk in. Anyway, that's it for our show. Tune in next time for the Effloresca episode of These Films Ruined. See ya.